So I'm presenting today on our B2B journey from Magento 1 Community to Magento 2 Enterprise. After this morning's keynote, I'm thinking that some of y'all might be interested in this subject. So my name is Joshua Warren. I'm the CEO of Creativity. You can find me on Twitter. I'm also a Magento certified developer, Magento certified solution specialist. And with me today in the audience is David Deppner. And David, stand there. He's the VP of IT and e-commerce at ClearBags. ClearBags is the business that we profiled in this talk. So he's here as well. There's a lot of content to cover. There's not enough time for it all. I know that there's going to be a lot of really in-depth questions, in-depth case study type things that y'all are going to want to hear about. So both me and David will be available after the talk here in this room to keep chatting. So with that, Creativity is a Magento solution partner. We've been focused on Magento since 2008, and we're a Magento 2 trained partner. But more interestingly, I think to most people in this room, is ClearBags. ClearBags has been in business for 20 years. They sell crystal clear packaging for products, so they are a B2B brand selling packaging to help other brands better display their products. And something that really sets them apart is 98% of orders ship the same day. So there's a lot of interesting things around stock levels and inventory there. And their background on Magento. ClearBags has been very innovative and on the forefront with Magento. They actually started on Magento 1.0, began with an in-house developer, and back then the initial build took about 7 months. So they have been one of the first on Magento 1 and one of the first on Magento 2. So we've kind of talked about who we are, but the main focus today really is on that journey from Magento 1 to Magento 2. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of the when and the where of that journey. Big question everyone has is, when do I move to Magento 2? And that link there, when you download the slides in about a week when they're available, that link will take you to a great article that David wrote that kind of talks about his thought process of when to move to Magento 2. It was written before the general release, so it does kind of talk about, should you go with general release, should you wait, that sort of thing. But really good article, really good points there, and we're going to talk about a few of them this morning. So first of all, a lot of people, there's some people out there that just say, we're moving to Magento 2 because we want to be on the forefront. And for those people, I don't really have to convince you to go to Magento 2. The ones I do the most convincing with are those that are taking a more conservative view. And so if you're taking a conservative view, you're saying, I don't know if I want to go to Magento 2 yet. The very first thing you need to ask yourself is, how much custom work do I have planned? How much custom development work am I going to be doing on my Magento 1 site in the next few months? And then say, do you want to pay to have it developed twice? Do you want to pay to have it developed for Magento 1, then pay to have it developed for Magento 2? So it's not necessarily a conservative move to stay on Magento 1. It can actually be a more expensive move. And then you also have to consider that custom work on Magento 2 can actually be faster. Our experience with the ClearBags project is very similar to that great experience that was presented in the general session today. We found actually that development on Magento 2 is faster. We're getting things to market faster than we could with Magento 1. So given this, I feel like there's only two cases to take a conservative view for moving to Magento 2. There's only really two solid reasons that I've found for why you might want to stay on Magento 1 for a little bit. First of all, if you're not planning any custom development work at all. And to be really blunt, if you're not planning any custom development work, why are you here? Why are you in e-commerce? E-commerce is all about speed. It's about innovation. This industry is constantly changing. The people that are sitting at home, they're not going to conferences, they're not learning new things, they're not applying those new things. Those businesses aren't around very long. So I'm going to assume that all of you are planning custom development work, you're planning enhancements to your site. The other case that I've found for waiting a little bit is if you're still ensuring that your extensions and your vendors are working on their Magento 2 ready version. And with the new Magento Marketplace, you're going to find that there's actually a lot of great extensions already ready for Magento 2. Don't let a Magento 1 extension hold you up from going to Magento 2. Again, from the keynote this morning, you heard how they actually use that as an opportunity to remove a lot of extensions. They said, how much can we actually accomplish with core now? So this is definitely a good opportunity. But if you do have, say you have an ERP system, you can't change your ERP system just to upgrade Magento. So if that ERP system isn't ready for Magento 2 yet, then of course you might want to wait a little bit. But for most merchants, you really now is the time to move to Magento 2, and you're going to see some great reasons why. So the next question to ask yourself, when you're going to take this journey, where are you going? What's your destination? And again, this is a great time to kind of rethink your use of Magento and to decide, do I stay with Community? Do I move to Enterprise? Which edition is right for me? And I know that there's a lot of you on Community because it's free. And I love Magento Community. I've done a lot of work on Community Edition as well as Enterprise Edition, but I have to say that no platform out there is 100% free. And that's not just Magento Community. You look at any open source free platform, none of them are 100% free. You're always paying someone to maintain it, someone to work on it. I like to say Community Edition, it's free as in free speech because it's open source, but it's not free as in free beer. There is no free ride, there's no free drinks, other than maybe, at the Imagine parties. So definitely remember that Community Edition is great, but it's not free. So you should definitely keep that in mind. On the flip side of things, though, there is no one-size-fits-all recommendation. You might talk to some people that'll say, everyone needs Enterprise Edition. Just don't even worry about Community. Don't look at Community. Everyone needs Enterprise Edition. I don't think that's the smartest way to look at it, personally. I think that there isn't a one-size-fits-all recommendation. You have to be smart about this. You have to understand your business and your business needs and make a decision on Community versus Enterprise. And that's really something that is specific to your business that you really need to be involved in and not just have someone tell you what to do, but instead think about it. And I like walking merchants through this process of thinking through this. The first thing I say is Enterprise Edition going to provide you any features that you were going to either buy an extension for or you're going to implement custom? Because if it does, then by purchasing Enterprise, you can oftentimes save quite a bit of money. Next up, does Enterprise Edition include features that are going to increase your profits? And notice I said profits there, not just sales, because Enterprise does have features that are actually going to lower your costs in addition to improving your sales. So a lot of people look at it just kind of on the conversion rate side, the optimization side, because that is kind of the sexy side of it. No one likes to talk about cutting costs. It's kind of boring. But definitely, Enterprise can provide both cost reduction and increased sales. So look at it as how is it going to impact your profits. And then, of course, going to the kind of the sexier part, conversion rate. Magento Enterprise is significantly faster and scales significantly higher than Community Edition. So if you have a large site, or even if you are a small site, but you get a lot of traffic and you want to see that conversion rate improve, you can do that through the performance enhancements in Enterprise. And we're going to look at some specifics with that in a minute. Another thing is, again, kind of going back to the cost side of things, with that scalability built into Enterprise, is Enterprise Edition going to allow you to deploy Magento 2 with fewer servers? Definitely, I've seen some companies out there with just incredible hosting bills. I get now why the hosting partners always have the best swag, always have the best booths, because there's a lot of people spending a lot of money on hosting. And Enterprise, there's some great scalability features built into that to where you can handle significantly more traffic with a lesser hosting bill. So ClearBags, they looked at all this, and again, you can go back to that blog article that David posted, and he kind of walks you through his thought process there. But they looked at all this, and in their case, there was a very tangible financial benefit, not only for moving to Magento 2 Enterprise, but for making that move now and not waiting 3 months, 6 months, a year. They had a very solid financial case for it. So that is kind of how they got to the where and when to move to Magento 2. So now the fun part, the actual process of moving from Magento 1 to Magento 2, and I think that's where we're going to get a lot of questions. I think it's probably what most of y'all are interested in hearing about today. So we took a very unique process, I think. I think a lot of people are still figuring out kind of the technical background, the project management background of how to move from Magento 1 to Magento 2. So what we did is we sat down and we looked and we said, first of all, what custom development is actually needed? What do we need to develop custom versus what's core in Enterprise? And in order to do that, we went ahead and we set up a Magento 2 base installation. We said, okay, here's base copy Magento 2 Enterprise. And we went through and we reviewed the features with David, with ClearBags of what we did and didn't have to implement custom. And some of the features that are in Magento 2 Enterprise that we didn't have to implement custom that ClearBags is able to use now. First up is customer segmentation. The enterprise customer segmentation system, it allows you to target specific segments with unique content, and it's always interesting. I think a lot of people they hear the bullet points, they hear the blurbs, and they say, well, I don't know if that really applies to my business. They don't really think about how they can take advantage of these features. And so with clear bags, I even thought at first, I was like, selling bags, is this, what sort of customer segmentation is there between, somebody buying this bag versus that bag? David educated me on that though. Customers for clear bags, they vary greatly. There's some that are producing artwork, photography, there's greeting card companies, jewelry companies, people that are actually packaging full-size canvas prints. And you don't necessarily want to target the same content at someone that is, buying a very large amount of clear bags just to put their greeting cards in versus somebody that's showcasing, say, a large canvas print, showcasing the jewelry that their boutique produces, things like that. So that's where this customer segmentation feature really comes in handy. And again, it's something that we did not have to do any custom work for because it was built into core. And again, Magento Community, all those different types of customers, they're all being treated exactly the same. And I'm sure you've heard personalization quite a bit at this conference and making sure that your content is personalized to the specific buyers. There was a really interesting talk yesterday talking about B2B design from Brendan Fikowski, and he talked about how buyers these days, B2B buyers, they are expecting a personalized experience. If you aren't providing them a personalized experience, they're finding other vendors. And I think that's a shock to a lot of B2B companies. I've talked to several that are like, well, we mainly use catalogs and our buyers aren't really interested in technology and we don't even know how much they're using the site. And you look at the statistics, they're using the site, and if they don't like it, they're finding other vendors now. So it's very important to be able to offer segmented, personalized content. Magento 2 Enterprise also has a loyalty program built into it that we're able to leverage. And again, this is something else that's been interesting to see as this goes into the B2B space. So many of these originally B2C features have become a big deal for businesses, and it's things that your buyers are actually expecting now. So it's going to allow us to drive repeat sales with very carefully timed loyalty offers. And then also the visual merchandiser, and again, this is something I was thinking, does B2B really need this? Yes, they do. Really interesting to see how different companies have been using this, and it's an exciting feature that wasn't available for the Clearbag site before until after the migration, and so that's something that is available now, and again, no custom development work, nice little budget saver. Related product rules, you can automatically associate and display related products. And I actually see this being used more and more on B2B sites because on these B2B sites, you have such a large and deep product catalog, so much more than most B2C sites. And you don't need to try to go through and manually associate all those products to each other. So it definitely makes it much easier for you. And there were some great product videos on the Magento 1 site, but they kind of tended to get lost. And moving to Magento 2, the product video features that are built in, we're able to better highlight those. That was something that was added just by moving to Magento 2. And again, no custom development work. And I think we're going to see really great returns off of getting that video content out there. When you have a buyer, especially someone that maybe is new to their industry, they go to your site and they get lost. They are overwhelmed. They don't really know exactly what they need. Some interesting things with packaging as far as inside dimension versus outside dimension, different things like that that I had no idea about before I got involved in this project, that there's a lot of buyers out there that also, they don't really care about that. They've just been told that they need to get bags that fit this product, and they realize it's much, much more complex than they thought. And buyers these days, especially the younger buyers, they are used to going to YouTube and watching a video. That's how they learn. They go out and they find videos. And so building that content, building those videos into your site using Magento 2 keeps them on your site, helps them learn, helps them find the products that they need. Then also, by moving to M2 Enterprise, it added private sales and events. Before, Clearbags was able to offer with Magento 1 Community some group-specific pricing, but now you can actually do sales and events that are targeted to very specific customer segments. And again, that goes back to realizing that B2B buyers really do expect personalization. They expect you to speak to them and their needs, not to just talk about your product. So, Another thing that I'm seeing more of in B2B is banners and different promotions and things like that, and that's something that I've already seen a lot of ways we're able to use that, not only to cut down on development time with the build, but then with ongoing support, ongoing maintenance, the ClearBags team is going to be able to do more with the banners on their site without having to call a developer, without having someone technical work on it. Then just a couple more of the features that are just built in that they're taking advantage of. Shopping assistance, you're able to actually assist people as they go through your site, as they go through the checkout experience. And again, that's really useful in B2B, and I don't see a lot of B2B companies using it yet, because the difference between a 2x2 bag, a 2x3 bag, a 3x2 bag, all these very specific little differences can be challenging, and if a buyer gets frustrated, they're just going to leave. So this way you can actually get them on the phone, get them on a live chat, and walk them through what they need and actually place it in their cart and make sure that you get that sale. And finally, we've done a lot of custom work, as you'll see in a little bit, on the search system. And one of the things that helped us with Magento 2 Enterprise is the weighted search that's built in. And so it was easier to weight different attributes. Again, make sure those buyers are able to find the products that they need quickly, so they're not going to your competitors. So we looked through everything that Magento 2 Enterprise provided so that we weren't reinventing the wheel. And this is an important step. Not every team does this. I had a really interesting chat with someone from Magento on the training side of things yesterday about how they wish that every merchant, before they started a new build, went through the merchant training, the merchant-focused training on how to use Magento, because so many times you end up paying someone to implement a feature that's already built into Magento. So very important. First thing we did was kind of stand up that site and say, okay, we're going to run through all the features that are available. We're going to make sure, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's not duplicate work. After we got that done, we performed a test data migration, especially older sites that have been around since the 1.0, 1.1 era. They have some interesting things in their databases. They have interesting database structures, lots of fun little legacy stuff in there. So we decided, okay, if we're doing anything else, let's just do a test data migration. Let's make sure everything comes across well. Let's identify what issues we are going to have, and let's also get some content into the site so that we can start seeing how these features are going to look, how the site's going to work. Then my background originally was in development, so then we jump into what I consider the fun part. Y'all may consider the boring part, code. We start development work, and we basically code, we test, and we repeat. And we'll talk in a little bit about how Magento 2, with its focus on testing, really saved a lot of time and money on that part of the process. So now I'm going to walk you through, as we were coding, the custom features that we built specific for the ClearBags project, so you can see kind of what is possible relatively easily with some customizations in Magento 2. So we did icon-based subcategory navigation, which is a fancy way of basically saying this. So on each category page, you have icons for the subcategories. So again, you have a buyer that comes to your site, and they are looking for one very specific type of bag. And people these days, I mean, it's all so visual. Even in the B2B space, especially now in the B2B space, people don't want giant walls of text. They don't want to have to hunt around and find, okay, where's the link to this specific type of bag that I need? They want to just look and say, okay, I'm looking for a food-safe bag. Oh, cool, I click right there, there it is. Next thing we implemented, and this is something we've been working really closely with the Magento team on as well, because this is very complicated, and that's search by size. Right now, stock default Magento site, you type in 2-inch by 4-inch like that, and you won't necessarily get the best results if you have a really large product catalog that has a lot of different dimensions in it. You're going to see products that are 2x4, 2x5, 2x6, 2x7 because they say 2 in them. So we went through, based on some work that David's team had done on Magento 1, and we implemented something in Magento 2 so that when you search for 2x4 versus 4x2, it understands the difference. Because again, the interesting world of product packaging, I didn't really ever think about the fact that actually, yes, a 2x4 bag is very different than a 4x2 bag, that in that industry, the order there matters and it makes a big difference. And you don't want to ship someone a pallet of 2x4 bags when they wanted 4x2 bags. That's a very expensive mistake and a frustrating situation for the customer as well. So we customized the search system so that it has some intelligence behind that, and then it also basically allows you to search by ranges, because you might not need a bag that's exactly 2x4. You might be willing to take one that's a little bit larger, a little bit smaller. So did some very in-depth customizations there that help just help people find the products they're looking for. And another thing that we may be changing when the B2B module comes out soon is displaying the price per pack and the per piece price in the cart and checkout. That was a feature that wasn't there yet, and there's some good changes coming around pricing with the new B2B module. But we implemented that to, again, just help buyers make sure they're getting what they want at the price point that they want. Some people like to look at things as price per pack. Some people compare based on price per piece. So this is just giving the buyer the information that they need. You want to make it as modern and smooth and quick as a process as possible, because again, that's what your buyers are expecting, and if they're not getting it, they're going to your competitors. And then we modified the checkout to include several B2B specific fields, some data and information that the company wanted to collect so that they had it available in their records. They could use it in their CRM systems and all. This is one area that, again, I've been talking to the Magento team about, because modifying checkout isn't quite as easy as I think anyone would like it to be. So I would say if you're planning a migration to Magento 2, you're working on a Magento 2 project, if you see a relatively high estimate related to modifying checkout, it's probably accurate, because it is an area that is still a little complex. And then another thing we did is we implemented Google's reCAPTCHA system for spam prevention, just kind of the standard CAPTCHA that everyone expects now. So we built that into Magento 2. And so that's kind of the scope of the project. So you can see that this wasn't just kind of a download Magento 2, click migrate, and you're done. This was a relatively complex project. And I think that the results that we got from it are even more impressive, just because it wasn't a cookie cutter site. It wasn't a real simple site. It was a relatively complex site. So jumping into those results, the very first thing I did before we got into benchmarks and things like that, I actually went out to our development team, found one of our smartest developers who was actually received an award here last year for his work on Magento 2. So he tends to know what he's talking about. And I said, okay, take all the technical advantages, all the technical wins, all the great stuff that you felt like Magento 2 has over Magento 1, and summarize it into like 10 bullet points and make it a little less technical. He did that. I had to ask him to do it again because I didn't even understand half of it. And I have now taken what he said and simplified it a little bit more as well. So, and I want to, on each of these, relate it back to the business advantage. Because technical wins are great, but at the end of the day, if it's not saving you money or making you more money, why do you care? So I definitely want to do that. So very first thing is, and the biggest thing that he was most excited about is that Magento 2 runs on a very modern tech stack. So what's that mean? It means it runs on PHP 7. It runs on the latest version of MySQL and just other newer, better technologies. And one thing I do want to call out, because I saw a developer tweet about this because of the way some of the benchmarks have been presented. Moving to PHP 7, you're sitting there, okay, well 7, it's greater than PHP 5, which is what we were on before, but other than that, why do we care? What's the difference? A lot of the performance improvements in Magento 2 come from PHP 7. About 50% of the improvements. If you take Magento 2 and you run it on PHP 5, it's not nearly as fast as it is on PHP 7. So by moving to PHP 7, not only is that the technology that new developers are learning, but it's also significantly faster. It's helping make your site faster. It's a very clean architecture. Magento 2, from a technical standpoint, there is a very well thought out, well designed architecture behind every single piece of it. That was true with Magento 1 as well. I definitely don't want to knock Magento 1 on this, but Magento 1 was architected in 2007, 2008. A lot has changed in computer science and in software engineering in the past 8 years. So again, Magento 2 kind of leapfrogged a lot of the other PHP platforms out there and really came out with a really solid technical architecture. And developers are loving it, and as you'll see in a little bit, not only are they enjoying it, it's making their jobs better, but it's actually helping us get things done faster. One of the biggest things with that, and this is a computer science course in and of itself, so I'm not going to dive into it, is Solid, and SOLID is actually an acronym for the 5 basic principles of what's called object-oriented programming, or basically any modern programming. That wasn't really present in Magento 1. Magento 2 adds that, and again, it makes it so much easier for a developer to come in, and maybe they aren't 100% up to speed with Magento yet, but they know these things. They can get up to speed on Magento so much faster. And it's been interesting as I'm training developers. I've found that really good PHP developers that don't have a Magento 1 background are learning Magento 2 faster than the actual Magento 1 developers. And again, it comes down to these architectural decisions, I think. And then what I would have put at the top of the list that he kind of had down near the bottom of his list is who here has dealt with extension conflicts before? We love those, right? Those are great. So yeah, extension conflicts are a thing that happens, and they happen more often in Magento 1 than we would like. Well, the Magento 2 team gave us an architecture that really, really reduces the number of extension conflicts you're going to have. It makes your life, as a developer, as a merchant, as an extension author, it makes your life so much easier. So that was a huge win. And then you hear a lot, especially from the technical team at Magento, about how there's automated testing in Magento 2. We have this automated testing, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And again, to bring it back to a business standpoint, what you need to know about that is it saves you money because developers are finding bugs faster. They're not necessarily slipping out into production. And also, you're not having to sit there and click through every little step on your site every time you have a proposed change you want to make. You have an automated testing platform that you can run, and you can know that when you've made changes to your site, everything still works. Then the biggest technical win is performance. Even before we benchmarked it, it was very, very obvious to us that Magento 2 is much, much faster. We flipped it over from development mode to production mode, we started running it, and we just said, wow, this is nice. This is very nice. But I wanted to get more specific. I've even seen some benchmarks from Magento and from other companies that have, kind of showed Magento 1 versus Magento 2, demo stores, demo sites, the performance differences between the two. And I said, well, that's great, but at the end of the day, for clear bags, they don't care if a demo store is faster. They want their site to be faster. So I said, okay, let's stand up a copy of clear bags on Magento 1, and let's stand up a copy of clear bags on Magento 2. And let's benchmark these two different implementations. We did it on the exact same hardware. And this is just so that the developers that are in the audience don't call me out and say, we were using a supercomputer or anything like that. This is fairly standard commodity hardware. This isn't going to cost you a ton of money with your hosting partner or anything. So definitely good, simple setup. And I do want to thank Lexicon, their hosting company. They actually stood the server up for us. They did some of this benchmarking. I wanted kind of an independent third party to do it. I didn't want myself or someone from Clearbag kind of trying to tweak the results. So. And I think the slide kind of speaks for itself. The blue line there is the Magento 1 community Clearbag site. The orange line that completely and totally blows the curve is their Magento 2 enterprise site when it's running Varnish. And you see that Varnish is now supported by default in Magento 2 enterprise. It's not hard to set up. It's so much easier to set up. And then the red bar that's kind of in between the two is the Magento 2 enterprise site without Varnish. And at this point, I would definitely say with Magento 1, we sometimes would be on the fence on, like me personally, should you use Varnish? Should you not? Is it really worth it? A lot of complexities behind it. Magento 2 Enterprise, there's no reason not to use Varnish. The support's built in, it's supported by Magento, they're backing you up on it, it will work, and the results are amazing. But even, let's take Varnish out of the picture, because again, saw some tweets yesterday saying, everyone's benchmarking and they're just comparing M1 without Varnish to M2 with Varnish, and that's not a fair comparison. So here's what I guess they would call a fair comparison. This is Magento 1 Community versus Magento 2 Enterprise. Exact same hardware, running the Clearbags code without Varnish. And the blue line there, that's the original Magento 1 performance. The red line is the Magento 2 performance. And on these two slides, that's transactions per second. So that's how many people can actually complete that action in 1 second on that server. So it's a nice little boost, especially those product pages. So much more scalable. You can handle so much more simultaneous traffic on one server than the site could with Magento 1. And again, looking here, this time actually you want lower numbers, so the lower bars are better. In the same order, though, on the left there in the blue, that's Magento 1 Community. The middle one, that's Magento 2 Enterprise in the red, and kind of the orangish on the far right, that's Magento 2 Enterprise running Varnish. And this is basically the time it takes for the server to return the first bit of information to the person that's viewing the page. And so it's significantly faster on Magento 2 than it was on Magento 1. And one thing that amazed me, that I redid this math, I was like, I have to be off by like a power of 10 here, something's wrong. Single server, Magento 2 Enterprise, 4 clear bags, when we did this benchmarking, it could handle 3,000 simultaneous homepage visits. So literally every second, 3,000 new people could be hitting that homepage. And that was a 3,308% improvement over what the site was able to do on Magento 1 Community. So that was huge. And again, this goes back to where Magento 2 Enterprise can save you a nice bit of money on your hosting bill, because let's say you do have, a big promotion coming up, or you do have, marketing campaign you're going to do, and you know that your traffic's going to spike. Well, you know that on pretty basic hardware, you can handle 3,000 simultaneous visitors to your homepage every second. And again, you're serving those visitors so much faster on the exact same hardware. So just upgrading the software there makes such a huge difference. We also did some scalability testing, and one interesting thing with that that I think the hosting companies are the most excited about, because they have to deal with it when the servers get overloaded, is that under very heavy load testing, Magento 2 is raising basically the pressure on the server by 59% less than Magento 1. So again, you're able to squeeze a lot more out of the exact same hardware. So that was really exciting for us to see. And then another interesting thing is we're running these really heavy loads, and I was curious. I was like, it's one thing to say, okay, it's possible to serve 3,000 visitors per second, but what sort of experience do those visitors have? Is it, yeah, it loads, but it takes a minute or two, and they're going to have left your site anyway, or is it a good user experience? So under very heavy loads, the Magento 1 site for clear bags was taking 3 seconds to respond. Thanks to Varnish and the other things built into Magento 2 Enterprise, that exact same site, that exact same load, it was responding in 0.2 seconds. So much faster. I mean, literally, this is why before we even benchmarked it, when we were just kind of playing with it, we were saying, man, this thing is fast. It is nice. Another thing, on average, pages are beginning to render twice as quickly on the Magento 2 site. This is, if you're do much with design or with performance testing, the start render time. That's basically the time it takes for something to appear in the user's browser so they know your site's not broken. So that's an important usability metric. And on average, with M2, with the Clearbags implementation, it was twice as fast. So again, really excited about the results that we've had here with the performance. More importantly, though, the financial impact of those results. And so I linked there to a study that talks about, you've heard all the stats about faster your site is, better your conversion rate is. So one of those stats is 47% of your consumers expect web pages to load under 2 seconds. And you'll remember that the Clearbags Magento 1 site, when it was under a heavy load, it was taking 3 seconds. So right off the bat, 47% of people were getting frustrated with that. 40% of people at 3 seconds just flat out abandon the site. And this is something we're seeing in B2B as well as B2C. You would think that, B2B buyers, I have a relationship with them, they'll be patient. No. People, they expect kind of the same results from their B2B processes as they do their B2C. Every 1 second delay in your site's performance, I've seen so many different numbers for this, but one of the more conservative studies I've seen says that 1 second delay causes at least a 7% drop in conversions. So I like to break that down and say, okay, 7%, you're trying to do the math in your head. Done the math for you. Let's say you sell $1,000 per day on your website. 1 second delay, because you're on Magento 1 Community instead of moving to Magento 2 Enterprise, that's costing you $25,000 a year. And suddenly you're thinking, man, that enterprise license, that might be worth it. But all right, let's say you sell $10,000 per day. 1 second delay, that's costing you $250,000 a year. And then, of course, the really big guys in the room, you're selling $100,000 per day, that same 1 second delay, it's $2.5 million. And again, I sit there and I say, if you're at that size, just the cost savings alone, the increased revenue you're going to have, it just makes sense. When you move to Magento 2, you should be moving to Enterprise because it's going to have a definite financial impact on your business. And again, kind of summing that part up, on the exact same hardware, real-world case of the ClearBags code, their products, their data, it was significantly faster on Magento 2 Enterprise than it was on Magento 1. And one thing that I'm most excited about is that this is out-of-the-box performance. This is, literally we set it up. We didn't do weeks and weeks and weeks of performance tuning. We just stood this up and saw what we could do with it. We can definitely push Magento 2 further. I know that within a couple of years of the release of Magento 1, people were doing amazing things with server architecture, with performance improvements that were really pushing the envelope of what you could do with Magento. I know the community is going to do that with Magento 2 as well. So we're going to see even faster sites scaling up even higher. And along those lines, no one out there has found the upper limits to Magento 2 scalability yet. There hasn't been a Magento 2 build that kind of pushed the limits beyond what Magento 2 could do. There's so much scalability built in with things like Varnish that we definitely have a lot of room to grow. There's definitely a lot more we can do with performance enhancements. Now, the last thing, what some of y'all are probably really waiting on is basically the cost, is the overall results and how that went. So time to market was significantly faster. We did this entire project from kind of kicking off the first little bit of development work to getting it substantially complete. It took us 8 weeks. And y'all heard the same thing. I thought it was interesting. I actually didn't know the general session that the stat they were going to give was 8 weeks, that their build took four developers, 8 weeks. And that's real similar to what we saw as well. And again, go back to Magento 1, the first Magento 1 build. Some of those were taking months and months and months. If you do have someone tell you, oh, your Magento 2 site, it's going to take 6 months, there's a good chance the first 4 months is them learning Magento 2. So be careful with that when you hear things like that, because definitely if you know Magento 2, if you've really invested in it, it is fast. It is fast running. It is fast to develop for. It's a joy to work with, honestly. Then also, though, adding new features is going to be significantly faster. And again, heard that earlier this morning. Developing new features and new functionality on Magento 2 because of that technical architecture that it has, it's so much faster. And that's with people that, we've been doing this. They said there's 800 sites live on Magento 2 right now. There's over 200,000 sites on Magento 1. So obviously the development community still learning Magento 2. We're going to get faster and faster and faster. So definitely excited about that. I think it's going to move projects along faster, which obviously saves y'all money, but also as you're responding to all these new trends, you're seeing all these changes here at Imagine, that things your competitors are doing, things like that, you can implement those into your site significantly faster on Magento 2 than Magento 1. Took us less than 1,000 hours of billable work, which was interesting because that was 80% of the cost of a similar Magento 1 project last year. And again, a lot of people are out there quoting Magento 2 projects at very interesting large numbers. And that's not necessarily because of Magento 2. That might be because they don't know Magento 2 well enough yet. So definitely talk to different people, get different quotes, things like that, because what we're seeing, and again, kind of what I heard in the keynote this morning, is it's about 80%. So the exact same project on Magento 1 versus Magento 2, if you have a team that knows what they're doing, that's really experienced in Magento 2, it's only taking about 80% of the time. So a few takeaways for y'all before we jump into some questions. Very first thing you should consider is when to migrate, and hopefully I showed y'all that now is the time. Jump on this. Get ahead of your competitors. There's really, unless you have a really complex integration that just hasn't updated yet for Magento 2, get moving. Don't get left behind. And then where do you want to go? Do you want to go to community? Do you want to go to enterprise? And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that you absolutely should do one or the other. I would say, again, it's this formula you have to work through for your specific business. First thing you need to consider is the enterprise features. Are you going to use those features? Are they going to help you sell more? Are they going to lower your custom development costs? Look at the performance. Look at this significant increase in performance, the increase in scalability. Is that going to make Magento 2 Enterprise worth it for your business? And this is kind of the metric that I run through. And I basically say, okay, take your development time savings, add up your revenue from enterprise features or your cost savings if it saves you some money on costs. Add up the additional revenue from performance, and that's something that you can do really easily. There's a lot of really good free tools out there that you can run a performance benchmark on your site. You can look at how fast it is now. You can look at your traffic. You can look at your conversion rate, and you can actually just do the math and say, okay, this is the specific amount of money that I'm going to get in additional revenue by going to Magento 2 Enterprise. And then, of course, add in that server cost savings. You know, if you're on a real complex setup, you have 5, 10 servers, there's a good chance you're going to be able to reduce that if you move to Magento 2 Enterprise. So definitely would encourage you to run through that for your specific business. If you need help with that, if you have questions about that, definitely ask them during our Q&A or come find me later. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and just, David and I are very active on Twitter. So definitely, if you do have questions, you don't have a chance to ask them today, you think of them after you get home, reach out to either of us on Twitter. I've told you kind of the integrator's perspective of this project, and I know David would love to talk to you as well about his experience with Magento 2.